Welcome to a very special episode of the Blue Demon Room podcast, Hall of Fame episode of the Blue Demon podcast. I'm Paul Pabst, your guest host. I'm excited to introduce you to some of DePaul's athletic superstars coming back for Hall of Fame weekend. Let's get right to it. I'd like to welcome to the show DePaul track and field superstar athlete, Missy Fraser. Missy, congratulations on being elected into the Hall of Fame. We're going to get into last night's event in a little bit. I have to use paperwork because your bio is pretty long. Graduated in 2012, physical education. Second team All-American in the Javelin 2012. Four-time Big East outdoor champion. You didn't give anyone else a chance to be Big East champ. I like that. 9 female athletes have won Big East titles. You're one of them. You got the DePaul hammer throw record still after your junior year. You're from Canada, which means you're super friendly. Let's get into all that. I want to go back to last night. Well, let's go back a little further. How did you get the call that you're in the DePaul Athletics Hall of Fame?
It was kind of an interesting time. I just gotten back from a really lovely vacation. I had gotten engaged during that vacation, so I'm like having this lovely week, and I get a message from athletic director Peavy just asking if we had time to chat, and he gives me a call, and he's like, well, really, this call is not to talk about track. It's really to ask you and tell you that you've been inducted into the Hall of Fame. So it was a bit of a shock.
Were there tears, shock?
It was definitely shock. I think for me, my athletic career it was always just, I'm just doing what I was supposed to do type of thing. So to get recognized for the effort and everything that went into it is such an honor.
It's one of those things when you're growing up, you dream of like competing or getting a college scholarship. You don't think your name's going to be on a wall somewhere someday, and that's what's going to be. I do want to get into, you're Canadian. I've heard that for Canadian athletes in high school, one of the big chips is, can I get a college scholarship in the States? Was that the goal growing up?
No, actually. I have a very interesting recruitment story. It's funny. When growing up, I played rep softball. I did track. I did 4 track meets a year. That was it in high school.
It's a casual sport for you.
Yes, it was like my accessory sport. Kept me in shape, that type of thing.
Yeah, great.
Luckily, Brad Miller, actually, former last year's inductee, his dad's a coach up in Canada, and that's kind of how he saw my results and fed them down to coach, and kind of the rest is history.
So in high school, javelin and the hammer?
No, just javelin in high school.
So for people, I'm going to get into the javelin in a minute, but when you go from high school in Canada to an inner city track program, I think a lot of people think like a city school track, where is there room to do it? Where do you throw the javelin in Lincoln Park?
Well, originally we would go up to a little like tiny park called North Park. It's up. I can't even remember how far it is. It is like literally there would be people walking their dogs down like a little pathway. We kind of watch for people coming. We go off to one side and we throw a javelin there. And then I think it was probably, I'm trying to remember if it was my sophomore or my junior year where we went and did a partnership with Lane Tech, and that's where kind of we go.
And you were part of that. You were the first part of that.
Yeah.
So how much culture shock going? Were you small town Canada or big town?
Oh, small town, like 1,500 people.
Was DePaul and the city exciting, intimidating, both?
Both. Especially when I first came here, it was like, bye, mom and dad, like tears going down my face.
Freshman?
Like waving. I was lucky and I got to live in Sanctuary my freshman year.
I guess that's a good thing.
I know that's a big thing, but I'm like standing there on the Sanctuary steps, bye, mom and dad, tears coming down my face. But that kind of trepidation, I still am to this day pretty introverted. So definitely growing up in a small town, coming down here, it was very intimidating. But being at DePaul, you're surrounded by an amazing family atmosphere. Everyone here was so friendly and got to make some really good friends, and it kind of became exciting.
Being an athlete, you come in with maybe a freshman class or the seniors help you out. I think there's a different learning curve joining a new school, a city school, when you're on a team, because probably you're working out day 1, day 2 of getting here. But how much of being on a team helped you assimilate to Chicago?
Yeah, I had some really great teammates who were from the Chicagoland area, and that really just helped. They take me home for a weekend here or there, so you kind of get the like, okay, I'm not in the big city all by myself, so that really helped. And yeah, I think just getting out to experience. I was, again, from a small town, walking down the street, seeing the number of restaurants and amenities you have here.
Train,
the L. I remember how loud it was the first time. I was like scared of it.
Yeah, because you see it in movies and you have an apartment next to it. It's a different thing. There's a stereotype of people from Canada, and it's weird. Stereotypes are not necessarily a good thing, but it's positive. Everyone thinks Canadian people are ultra friendly. Were you the Canadian girl when you got here? Did people ask you questions about Canada?
Oh, yeah, all the time. And to this day, everyone's still about, about, and everybody makes fun of you for that. But no, it was definitely something that, she's the little redhead too. I kind of stuck out like a sore thumb. The redhead from Canada kind of was, my reputation until I started throwing, and they were like, oh, she can throw fire.
So you said in high school it was your side sport, your accessory sport, which is an interesting term I want to use someday. When did you get real serious with the hammer, with the javelin at DePaul, and who helped you get to the next level?
Yeah, it was definitely Coach Muir. I came in only throwing javelin, and we knew, because we have an indoor and an outdoor season in track and field, knew that, maybe we'll see if you can do something indoors. We tried shot put. It was not good.
Okay.
So we went the route of trying hammer and weight, and I had a pretty good affinity, picked it up pretty quickly, and that's kind of how that happened.
I want to get into the nuance of your sport because I'm a big track and field fan. I really am, and I love all the nuance of track and field. I don't think people understand it. I want to start with the javelin. I think people think the javelin, you grab it, you throw it like a broom, like it's a fixed thing. It has like a wiggle to it, correct?
Oh, yeah. It definitely has like a bit of a bend and a give, and you have to throw it perfectly or it doesn't go anywhere.
Right, because if you release it too high, too low, someone's going to get injured. You probably yourself, right?
Yeah. I guess it was just a minor injury. I hit a rock, and it skidded into one of my teammates' feet. And she just happened to be taking her shoes off at the time.
Right.
She had like a little incision on like the instep. Oh, yeah. That was like my...
But now, when she looks at that scar in her foot, she could say Hall of Famer, which is kind of a bonus.
I'll sign it for her the next time I see her.
Okay, I want to get into, now the shot put, that seems like every time I see shot putters in the Olympics, they are people that look like they could throw a shot put, like born to throw it.
Yeah.
How much of his strength, how much of his technique? I know you threw it once, but that specific sport.
I think it's a combination of both. Tim, massive individual, but the women's shot put's actually a little bit smaller. It's only 8.8 pounds.
Right.
A little bit smaller. And a lot of it is that technique and having just the perfect timing, the perfect torque.
The spin,
all of that. And it's really about the sequencing of it. 8.8 pounds isn't heavy, but if you're trying to throw 8.8 pounds out here versus like making sure it's perfectly in your neck, all of those types of things. And it's the same with all of the throws. It's so nuanced, and it was something that you can go out and throw a javelin. Anyone can go out and throw a javelin. Anyone can go out and throw a shot put. But to do it well, it is in those nuanced technical pieces.
With javelin, it seems like the footwork is almost the most important part. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we didn't have... There's not the torque, the spin as there is in discus and shot put and hammer. Javelin is like a very, very minute little torque, right? So you have to have a good rhythm, all of that. Same thing, the sequencing, the rhythm is all kind of what leads into having a really good throw.
So you threw javelin at a high level, at the college level, at DePaul. How many times have people asked you to throw a football? And can you throw it further than the average person, would you say?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, that was a fast answer.
I could definitely throw it. It's one of those things I was like...
And you're Canadian, so not a lot of football experience probably.
No, not a ton. Not a ton, especially in Ontario. We have winter like here. So
how does it work out when you throw a football?
People are like, oh.
Right. You know what you should do? You know would have been a great side job for you when you were at DePaul? You know the people who throw the shirts out to the crowds at Bulls games? It's a little late now, but that would have been a great gig for a javelin thrower.
Oh, yeah.
I want to get into the weight. The weight is, I want you to explain it, but you kind of hold it. There's a chain to the weight, to the hammer, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And then there's this piece here that you hold. You swing it and spin. Walk us through how you would tell someone how to do the weight for the first time to throw it.
Oh, Lord. Pray.
Yeah.
Grip and rip and pray. No, it's very heavy. The women's was 20 or 25 pounds, I think, and it's heavy.
What's your furthest throw in the weight?
17 meters-ish.
And not feet, meters.
Meters? So, yeah, again, Canadian, I don't know feet conversion.
Like 17 feet would have been like all time for a guy like me. I tried to throw it in college. You're going to have fun with this. I had a friend who threw the weight. I was like, oh, that looks like he's having no problem with that. I thought I was strong. So he goes, do the 3 spins and let it go thing.
Yeah.
And I was sore for about a week, and it went about 9 feet.
Yeah.
And the entire track team just laughed at me. Did you ever have, like, where you took a civilian at DePaul or elsewhere and said, hey, you give it a try?
No, not at DePaul, but definitely like when I would go home in the summer, like friends, family, my brother especially. You can do it. I can throw a javelin. It was always the javelin,
Yeah.
not so much with the weight. I didn't have a weight or a hammer with me at home during the summers, but javelin. We go down to the park and everyone would think that they could throw it, and it was pretty comical. And they're like, "Oh, I guess what you do is pretty cool, and you're pretty good at it."
All right, let's get back to your DePaul career. Missy Fraser joining us on the podcast. This is great. If I was going to show a clip of one moment on the track and field, the throw that you're most proud of or the win that you had, what would be the clip you'd want us to show?
Yeah, I was thinking on this, and I think the kind of moment that crystallizes in my mind was my junior year. We were down at Louisville. It was a last chance meet to qualify for regionals. I had already qualified for regionals. We were just keeping loose before the meets. And it was the first time that I threw 50 meters. I broke that number,
Right.
that barrier. The previous year, I had torn my ACL. So this was like my
comeback.
My first year coming back from that. I'd struggled kind of all season, not with the knee. My knee was 100%. It was more the mental aspect. So that was like, I think the kind of catalyst to be like, I broke that 50 meters. And then from there, I was able to kind of build on that.
Do you know it when it's leaving your body that, I got this one?
Oh, yeah.
There's a basketball player hitting that three-pointer.
Exactly. There's a feel to it, and you're like, yeah, I know this one's going to go far.
And the opposite?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You're like, and that's when you like, the javelin hasn't even landed, and you go and step over the line.
Oh, you foot fault?
Yeah, you foot fault it on purpose.
Because then the number's not recorded.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I don't want that one in the history
books. This is
books.
the javelin
Yeah.
version of tanking we just learned about on the podcast. All right, coming back to DePaul, seeing the campus coming back and talking to track and field athletes. If someone was young out there, like 9, 10, 11 years old, and said, I'm not really into the running part of track and field, I want to throw. Can a 10-year-old start throwing the weight in the javelin at a lower level, or do you have to wait until your high school?
No, I didn't do club track, but I have seen numerous kids once I went post-collegiately. Yeah, there's like little, 7, 8-year-olds. Obviously, maybe don't throw the weight.
Right.
It's a little heavy.
Little weight.
Little heavy. But no, it's a great way to really just build fundamentals for all sports. I think the fundamentals you learn in track and field, period, are something that are very transferable, and it's fun. It's fun to get to throw things far.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question that I have on my list. It's a real dumb question, so don't make fun of me too bad. So, are you right-handed or left-handed?
I'm right-handed.
So, when you're throwing the javelin right-handed, you're throwing and throwing, you're practicing all season. Do you sometimes throw it left-handed to build strength on the left side to compensate to help the right side? I don't know if there's kinesiology majors out there who could back me up on this. I would think that would be something you do. I brought this up one time on my day job, and people told me I was nuts. You're a track and field athlete. Is that a nutty question?
No. We definitely train both sides of the body, and there's like the neural pathways of even just throwing, because you have kind of learned habits, and they're usually bad habits on your dominant side. So you go and you throw your other side, and you don't have those bad habits. So you actually end up like, okay, this makes sense. You feel some different things out, and it actually does help your throwing to do bilaterally.
So not a dumb question.
No, not a dumb question at all.
I feel pretty good about that. So going back to when you're at DePaul and you're doing track and field, and afterwards, when you watch the Olympics and you see throwers like, I know Deanna Price from Southern Illinois, and she's gone to the Olympics, and you see the best in the world throw, are you watching as just a fan of the sport and you love it, or do you like say, ooh, she doesn't know what, that's a bad grip, or he is not getting it right there? Do you analyze it when you're watching the Olympics?
A little bit of both, yeah. Like definitely just love of the sport. Whenever it's on, I get so excited that track's on, and it does. And it's not just the throws events; it's all the track. I love it. I love it all. But yeah, definitely like you're watching, you're like, oh, that's not going to be a good throw, or that one's going to be a good one.
Right, you can sense it, right?
Yeah.
Let's go back to last night. You got in the Hall of Fame with DePaul. We talked about a little emotional. Tears during the speech? Any tears, any emotions? Where were we at?
Mostly nerves.
Yeah.
Public speaking is my worst nightmare, so I was like a little bit nervous. So I think that is probably what prevented me from crying. When I was preparing my speech, I definitely teared up when I was reading it to my partner or reading it to myself, I'd get a little misty-eyed, but I think the nerves kind of overtook that during the thing, thankfully.
That's fun. All right, now we're back at DePaul. I want to ask you some questions about the neighborhood. You said you lived in Seminary. Where did you live off campus your last couple of years? Did you live?
So I was at DePaul 5 years. I redshirted 1 year. So lived in Sanctuary for 3 years.
That's a spot, right?
Yeah. Oh, I lived in Sanctuary, and it was pretty sweet. Sanctuary for 3 years, and then I can't remember what but it was the one that was above the grocery store. That one.
Okay.
That's
dangerous.
That was where I was like, oh yeah, the L is really loud if you ever had your windows open or anything. So I lived there for a year, and then I did live off campus my last year at DePaul.
All right. I love the DePaul neighborhood. A lot of good food. Where were the food places and maybe other places you socialized at when you were in town?
Oh yeah, definitely. I would say two food places for sure. One is Lou's. It has a special place in my heart. It was where I had my recruiting visit. It's where we always took recruits when they were in town. It was also up the street. It was very, very close by. And who doesn't love pizza? So that would be one. And then the other place is Sweet Mandy B's. That was my roommate's spot. We went down there, I will say once a week, but that's a lie. It was definitely more than once a week. And even to this day, whenever I'm in the city, there's actually a downtown location of Sweet Mandy B's.
Look at you.
On Ontario.
Shout them out.
I found that last time I was here. Oh, yeah. Make sure I always stop and grab something from them when I'm in town.
Going back to when you start your career as a track and field athlete, and you're Canadian, or if you're in the States and things like that, it seems like there's a different world of college sports now, because NIL is not just football.
No.
I was reading about a softball player from Oklahoma who's making six figures. And does that just blow your mind when you look at the state of college sports right now?
Oh, 100%. My partner also he's Canadian, but also went to university down in the States, and we were talking about that. We're like, imagine having that. But I also, at the same time, I think we're probably one of the last classes where like social media was kind of just coming up. Like,
lucky for us.
Yeah, very thankful for you guys who don't have all the pictures and stuff that I could have posted. But no, I think it's a very different world. I look at the athletes now and all of the pieces that come to it, and I was thankful to be able to just be a kid and a student and an athlete.
That's it. If there were NIL, you would have taken it.
Oh, 100%. Who would say no to money?
Before we wrap up, this has been a lot of fun. If you go back and think about your career as an athlete and where your life went afterwards, and that call you got from DePaul University recruiting, if that call doesn't come through, do you go to the States and do track and field? Do you go elsewhere? Or is there a possibility it doesn't happen?
My recruiting, I kind of alluded to it earlier, was very different than I think most people. I was not.
You were found.
Yeah, I was found. Was not thinking about coming to the States at all. If anything, it was going to maybe be for like softball, not for track.
Right. Were you good in that too?
Yeah,
I
I played rep softball like most of my life, and then kind of when I went to school at DePaul, it kind of flipped, and obviously track became
So if DePaul doesn't call, what do you think? Your track and field career does not happen?
No, it wouldn't have happened at all. I did 4 track meets a year. That was it. Literally my accessory sport. Never even contemplated doing track and field outside of that.
And now we're sitting here a bunch of years later, not that many years later, and you're a Hall of Famer at DePaul.
A few years later, but yeah, no, it's one of those things. Coming here and doing track and field literally changed the trajectory of my life.
Thanks for joining us, Missy. It was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Welcome to a special episode of the Blue Demon Room podcast, Hall of Fame episode of the podcast. I'm Paul Pabst, your guest host. Excited to introduce some of our DePaul Athletic Celebrated alumni. The reason I got the paper, a lot of notes because a lot of accomplishments here. I'd like to welcome to the show recipient of the Dr. Robert Hamilton Special Service Award, former DePaul women's basketball player, softball player, probably baseball too. Yeah, I did a lot of stuff here.
12-inch, so hardball.
As well as former Associate Athletic Director of Marketing Operations and Student Engagement. Karen Loiacono joining us, and you are now a Hall of Famer.
Well, thank you, Paul.
When did you get the call and your reaction?
I got the call from Dwayne. I don't remember now, but it was pretty surprising because I thought he was calling me about something else.
Like business?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then he then he said, you're going to receive the Robert Hamilton Special Service Award. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like, all right, who voted for me? Because I'm going to kill them all. 'Cause,
But was it?
I just feel like, I said it was my job, Dwayne. How can you get but I guess it was for the over and above. And the other duties as assigned, as I said last night in my bullets in my job description. So,
But some people get awards like this for longevity. It's a quality of giving to a program or a university for 20, 30, 40 years. It's not necessarily that you were the best volleyball player or you're the best basketball player. It's service to a program, and that's what the award's about.
Exactly. So I'm very humbled by it and truly appreciate it.
Take me back to high school. You're from the suburbs of Chicago. How did you find DePaul? How did DePaul find you?
I grew up in the burbs. I played 4 sports in high school. I wwent to an all-girl Catholic school in Rolling Meadows called Sacred Heart of Mary. It was the sister school of St. Viator. Later on,
Sure.
those 2 schools merged. Now it's St. Viator is a co-ed school in Arlington Heights. But I was looking for schools and wanted to continue playing sports in college. And all of a sudden, like one day in the mail, a brochure came from DePaul, just one of those trifold paper brochures back in the day, and said that they were offering opportunities for women to compete in intercollegiate athletics at DePaul. And I hadn't really, I had written a few schools for scholarships and things like that and really hadn't gotten a lot of response. So I'm like, well, why not? So I, applied at DePaul. I got in, I enrolled. I commuted my freshman year, but and I declared PE as my major so I could kind of get into the gym and get to know people, and then tried out for basketball in the fall. And, the rest is history, as they say.
Of the 4 sports in high school, which one did you feel that you're the best at?
Softball, probably, or basketball, but probably softball.
Now, when you got here, DePaul basketball was established. Was softball new-ish?
Yeah, well, and basketball hadn't been all that established. It
Okay.
started in '74, and I got there in '76. The modern day basketball started in '74. I got there in '76, and but there were some good players. There were some good basketball players even on that first team. I mean, it was 2 scholarship players, and everybody else was a walk-on.
Right.
That's really how it worked.
But if you came in the 80s, I don't think, in my opinion, you're better than me on this, they may not have let you play 2 sports.
Oh, no.
And
No.
so you were going on 2 programs that were fledgling, 2 sports you were good at. Was there any conflict with the coaches of trying to play 2 sports, or did they need more bodies?
Oh, God, no. The coaches, so the seasons were a lot shorter then.
Yeah.
I mean, and honestly, we didn't, we had, we shared uniform. We shared uniforms with the volleyball team.
The softball team did?
Basketball and volleyball were the same jerseys. We shared uniforms for like the first 2 years. And then that kind of carried over to softball. But I think like the armpits were getting the yellow stains in them by that point. So they're like, okay, we got to get you new unis. But we shared uniforms. We shared facilities. And then quite frankly, there weren't that many women. So like when softball happened, they recruited from the other sports, hey, who could play softball? And as it turned out, I was the only player from the suburbs. And I had pitched 1 game in high school. And so they're like, all right, you're our pitcher. Because none of them had, and then all the city kids had never played 12-inch softball before with a mitt. Because in the city of Chicago, as you know,
16.
You play 16-inch with the clincher. And
Old
they
school.
were great athletes, but they had to learn a new game. And
When I
they
played,
did.
when I played 16-inch softball, there was one hand was the ball and the other hand
Yeah.
was something else. I was not that good at it. You
Yeah.
played it at a higher level. Is it weird to come back to campus, and now you're not gone, but you come back to campus, or when you look at the facilities and the opportunities, but specifically the facilities around DePaul's campus in Lincoln Park and elsewhere, when you started compared to now, it must be mind-blowing.
It is. It is. I mean, when we started, it was Alumni Hall, and they built Alumni Hall in the 50s, and it was, if you went down in the basement, there was a bomb shelter down there,
Right.
with old ration cans and stuff like that. But and so, but I was part of it. I was part of the administration at the time when McGrath-Phillips Arena was built, when Cacciatore Stadium and Wish Field were built. I mean, I was here for all those dedications and helped fundraise for those. So, it's quite an accomplishment. And then Wintrust Arena has just been an amazing part of it, and, the nice thing about Wintrust is, not $1 of this arena for DePaul was taken from tuition dollars. It was all fundraised for, and there's a revenue plan for it. So it's been great,
So when your athletic career was over at DePaul, your scholastic career was over, how did you stay with the program, with the school overall?
When my athletic career was over?
Yeah.
I lived right across the street from Alumni Hall, in the same apartment that I had as a senior. And so I was always there. I volunteered like a lot because
Show up.
Well, the men, that was the glory days. That's when Aguirre was there. Aguirre's a year behind me, and and all those guys played, Terry Cummings, and then moving forward, I was there in the neighborhood and hanging out. And I had, back then you had season tickets. Students bought season tickets. So I had season tickets in Alumni Hall, and I carried them over to the Rosemont Horizon when they built that.
I can't tell you how jealous I am. Little 8-year-old Paul Pabst to be living across the street from Mark Aguirre would have been the coolest thing.
It was fun. Well, I knew Mark. I mean, we went to school together, so I knew him.
I think he's one of the more underrated basketball players. I mean, obviously in college,
he's very good.
First team. Well, I think people don't look at him as like one of the all-time greats, both college and pro, because I grew up on him. He was my first favorite basketball player. But that time of the DePaul basketball program, I'm going to get back to what you've done. But when you see what's going on now with basketball, it feels like this rebirth. And with Coach Holtman, it does feel like, we've had times before, like, is DePaul basketball getting back? Is it going to get back? It feels like a very different energy and direction right now.
I hope so. Yeah. I mean, I think that. I mean, he's getting some more homegrown kids, which is what Ray Meyer happened to Ray Meyer. He got lucky that guys like Aguirre and Acorzine, Andy Pankratz all stayed home, and Joe Ponsetto, they all stayed home.
Skip Dillard and
Skip, and all those guys, they stayed home, and which was the nice part, And then there was a phase where we didn't get a lot of players from Chicago. They didn't want to stay home, and that's kind of it's always a struggle. It's a constant battle, but he's got Coach has some homegrown kids, so it's it's interesting to see if those seeds are going to sprout again. So we're hoping.
With youth sports, you played 4 sports in high school. You'd probably be discouraged in this time of day to play 4 sports. You'd probably have to do 2 and focus on 1.
Yeah.
If parents are watching this and their kids want to, they have that AAU for basketball. It's all year round. And the benefits of playing multiple sports, even if you want to focus eventually, maybe as a college athlete, on 1, what do you think they are?
Cross training. I think, and kids need a break. It's when you focus just on one thing, it's horrible. And I actually coached some grammar school ball right after I graduated from college, out on the northwest side of the city. It was Coach Ray's daughter, Petty, and his son-in-law were coaching at Immaculate Conception School. And so I coached girls, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade girls basketball. And one of the kids that I coached was a girl named Sue Fogarty, and she was playing basketball for me at IC, and then she went on to Resurrection High School, and she played 2 sports. She played basketball. She played 3, basketball, softball, and volleyball. But she became a very good volleyball player. So we recruited her at DePaul, and she wound up being not an All-America, but a very outstanding NCAA. She held the NCAA records for digs in a career, I think, or something like that. She was a great volleyball player, but she also still continued. We let her play softball too, and she liked to play basketball, and she did that. I think that cross training really helped her, especially in volleyball, because you can wear out an arm, hitting a lot. So she didn't play a lot of club volleyball.
Yeah, and I think disciplines cross over a little bit. Caitlin Clark from Iowa.
Yeah.
She started with soccer, and the angles on soccer with passes, you watch the passes she makes, those are soccer passes by a basketball player.
Yep. So you learn different skills if you play different sports. And I just, I really don't like one sport dominating
Burnout.
it. Yeah, and kids do get burned out. And I've seen it in softball a few times where kids, they were almost ready to quit by their senior year because they're playing for their parents or whatever. I mean, you got to play for yourself, and you got to enjoy playing.
Now, moving on from DePaul for a second, I want to look at the 2 sports that you focus on, basketball and softball. If you look at the state of women's college basketball and women's college softball over the past 10 years, it's like a stock going this way.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I mean, clearly we know what happened over the past 5 years of women's college basketball. It's become it's no longer a niche sport. It's major. People are financing it. It's on national TV all the time.
Right.
But college softball as well on ESPN has a ton of run for the College World Series. The games are on prime time.
Yep.
It is, if you look at women's sports over the past, I would say the past decade, I think people are realizing the market for it.
Yes.
And is this something you've learned over your career that women's sports didn't get a fair shake in your time, even in when I got started? How do you think the direction is going, and where do you see it going?
It's great. I mean, if you think about women's sports, is about 50 years behind men's sports.
Yeah.
And think about men's sports when it first started. I mean, they were drawing a lot, but some places weren't drawing a lot. And but women's sports is definitely on the rise. I think ESPN has a lot to do with that because ESPN did the first women's contract for the women's Final Four. That was that was huge back in the day. And you get when it happens in college, you get the trickle down.
Yeah.
And it starts. Then more girls in high school are playing, and then more little girls are playing. And that's what's happened. And then now they have mentors and they have role models that they can look at on television and see all the time.
It does trickle down.
And that's the difference.
My
That's the
daughters are
difference.
bombing 3-pointers from 25
Yep.
feet. And I
Yep.
tell them they got to calm down a little bit.
Yep.
Because dad can't shoot.
And they want to be somebody.
They want to be somebody. But that
Yeah.
is what it really means, trying to do something.
Yeah.
All right, before we let you go, I want to ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
At your time at DePaul, what was your favorite spot to go to? Food, drink, other?
So a lot of my favorite spots are closed now.
Are any still open?
Yeah, yeah. So, well, Chicago's known for pizza, right? So I think it's a little bit not a secret anymore, but Lincoln Parker's tried to keep it a secret for a long time for deep dish, and that's Pequod's Pizza
Right.
over on Clybourne. But there's really good pizza at 2 other places. Pat's Pizza on Lincoln.
Oh, I love Pat's.
Great thin crust. But then Art of Pizza on Ashland is phenomenal.
Right.
So I would say those. My favorite place to go get breakfast, a lot of my favorite breakfast places are closed, but Salt and Pepper Diner used to be up at
Legit? On Lincoln?
In Lincoln, but it's closed now. But they moved it. It's called Dash, and it's at the corner of Webster and Lincoln now. It's a really little place, but it's a taste of salt and pepper. They call it.
I could do this all day.
and that's pretty good too.
I could do food talk
That's
all
pretty
day
good
with
too,
you.
yeah.
You pulling Pat's out is a really good.
Yeah, and then there's always Kelly's Pub. I mean, after the games, that's where you went, Kelly's Pub. That's why I miss women's basketball being in Lincoln Park, because Kelly's Pub was the stop after the game.
I like that not too much has changed. There's some new places, but there's all the old school
Yes.
places. What was your favorite moment, either as an athlete at DePaul or watching another sport, where you're like, man, this is the reason I came here? And it could be during your career or even during your administrative career.
Well, there's a lot of moments, but I could say the ones where like the hair stood on the back of my neck was at the Rosemont Horizon when we hosted the I'm going to forget the year now, the 80. We hosted a regional,
Yeah.
and it was DePaul St. John's. I don't remember the other 2 teams, but it was the last year that in the men's tournament you could host at home, and we were doing it. And it was right after I got there, so it must have been 86. And the first game was going on, we were working, and I remember going over to sitting by the press tables in the corner because, we had a little break. And the DePaul men's team came out of the tunnel and just went to sit in the side seats in the end zone to get ready and just watch the end of the first game and come out to warm up. And you could feel the crowd. It was sold out, and you could feel the roar of the crowd, kind of like at the stadium with the Hawks with the national anthem. And it just was a rising crescendo as they came out, and the people were cheering for the DePaul team just walking out of the locker room, and I just remember my hair stood on end at that point. And then I don't know, it was a very famous Final Four or regional or final game because we played St. John's and we were down, and Dallas Comegys had to miss the second free throw. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember.
Kevin Edwards got the rebound, Rod Strickland put it in, and we moved on to the Sweet 16 that year. So that was 86, and so that was an amazing moment. Many amazing moments with DePaul Notre Dame at Rosemont Horizon with the men, and Alumni Hall. I mean, there were some unbelievable games against Marquette in Alumni Hall where with Gary Garland, Joe Ponsetto, Curtis Watkins, Dave Corzine, those guys. Alumni Hall was an amazing place to watch a basketball
I went there a
game as
couple
well.
of times in high school, and it would be like a cold winter night,
Yeah.
and you had to score a ticket because there's how many tickets they had,
Yeah.
4,000.
Yeah.
And we would go in there and watch, David Booth or maybe Tom Kleinschmidt,
Yeah.
and or even earlier than that. And I can remember going to campus as a little kid, going and seeing all the brownstones and
Yeah.
walking in the snow and the crunching.
Yeah.
It's great memories.
But I got to do a lot of those road trips and took a lot of fans there, and it was really fun. And then women, the women's side too. Our women going to the Sweet 16. I got to go to all of those. Take the band, the cheerleaders, get the fans going. Really had some tremendous thrills with those as well. And then softball, the first time breaking through in the NCAA tournament and actually finishing 3rd in the nation, almost beat UCLA in that first game. That's at the College World Series in Oklahoma City, and they loved us there because our fans were completely different than everybody else there. And UCLA was there,
Yeah.
and all the fans in Oklahoma really didn't like UCLA all that much because they went there every year. But our fans, we stood up in the 5th inning and sang "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," and they loved us. You would go up in the stands and people would high five you. It was great. It was great. So they loved having DePaul there. And then our coach at the time, Eugene Lenti, was a great. There was a guy in the Daily Oklahoman that wrote an article about him every day because he had such great quotes.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
If I told you, we're going to wrap it up, but if I told you when you got the letter from DePaul, the little mailer, or you called them and reached out to them,
Yeah.
that you'd be sitting here and you'd be in the Hall of Fame, you would have said what?
Never in my wildest dreams. I mean, back then, we we weren't getting recruited really. I mean, some of us were, a couple of us were, but we were just all together, and we were just so happy for the opportunity to play at the time. We didn't care about anything else.
Yeah.
We didn't care. We drove our own cars to the games. We had Coach Bruno's van, 3 on the tree. You know,
Yeah, 3 on the tree.
3 on the tree.
They don't know what you're talking about.
And he had no back. He had no back seat. So we put gym mats in there, and that's how we would go to games. And you know, we're playing tic-tac-toe on the frost on the side of the walls, and then he would just listen to WGN radio.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, Doug, we got to get. So we bought him a stereo, like a cassette stereo, to put in the van, which he did. And then he started playing Chris Christopherson tapes, and we're like, no, we got to do something else. But so yeah, we got some fond memories from those days. But we were just so appreciative of the opportunity to play at that time.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't care about anything else. Although we did start to complain a little bit, like we're like, how come the bleachers are in for our game? He goes, well, you want the bleachers out? We're all going to get here before the game. We're going to pull them out ourselves. So we did a lot of that kind of stuff.
The players had to pull them out.
Yeah, we did. We had to do a lot of self-promotion, and we did it.
They don't do that at Wintrust. They're just out. They don't have to pull them.
They're ready to go. They're ready to go. There's a lot more perks now, but honestly, we wouldn't trade any of that for anything.
Karen, great to meet you, and congratulations on the Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much.